And now,
Wake me when it's over.
yes, you are on, as they say.
First of all, I want to say that Peter is going to read it's a poem that I've asked him to read, but it's a long poem and takes us, not like an hour long, but like about 20 minutes long. And it's about the poet Gregory Corso and his relationship with Corso. And it's fantastic history. And so I just wanted to let you know in advance that it takes a little bit of concentration. So, in our soundbite Facebook, meme world, we don't tend to want to listen for that long, and it's a tough poem for him to read, is really what it amounts to. So I would really hope that everyone gives him a lot of energy for this poem, because it's one of the best things he's ever written. And so I look forward very much to him reading this particular poem, and I wanted to remember to say that. And in fact, we're talking about Peter Marty, who will be up after me. And in fact, of Peter Marty's poetry, Corso himself said, "Yeah, you made me see it. Good sound, good clear images." So that's what Corso himself said. And while we're at it, since we're doing that, many of you know who Jack Hirschman is. He said about an earlier book of Peter's, Bitter Smoke, Holy Words. Bitter smoke, holy words is good. You ain't scared of letting the self go on the page. You use the I with a certain confidence that suggests your I has its eye on the world as you, Jack Hirschman. So, without further ado, so I started thinking about this has a whole quality of nostalgia, which you're picking up on. And we've been through a gazillion things since Birthstone, but I realized even as I was looking for stuff to read, and then I came across something, and I said, well, what would amuse Peter? Because of course it's Peter's night, and I found something that I thought would amuse him, because I realized that I had written about him quite extensively. In fact, would you hold up your door prize, Stefan? Just hold that up. Peter figures very heavily. This is the only book I have in print called Don't Hesitate. That's all you have to do. Put it down now, please. Thank you. He's my Vanna White.
Thank you so much.
So, if you are interested, it's about the history of beat poets in San Francisco, the punk scene, and the Buddhism that Peter and I were involved in, so which actually is in the forefront and our lives are in the back. But he has a lot in there as Peter Marty. So if it's something that interests you, I am on Facebook, and you'll know it's me because there are other homes, because there's a William Burroughs tattoo as my profile, MERC. I will friend you back. Without further ado, we've had so many, we've known each other almost 50 years, and so we've had so many different sections of our lives, some of them quite ghastly, that I found a section where we were doing pretty well, and in 1989, that was part of a novel at the time that I was writing, in which I refer to him as Lou Ansley instead of Peter Marty. So he's going to be Lou Ansley in this. And I also remembered out in the strangeness of the whole thing, that at that time I was living now I live in Portland, Oregon. I was living just a few blocks away at that Buddhist Center KDK on Fell Street. And Libby Looning, who we all know, was working in this cafe, who would, guess what, she would feed me for free. But at any rate, so all this history, just you can't get away from it. And of course this Birthstone thing was very important to all of us, and it's quite wonderful that we're reuniting all of that. I'll get to the reading, and then I will introduce the great and marvelous Peter Marty. So, Wilbur Hot Springs Red House, an artist's colony in the winter of North Californian leather yellow grass. Lou Ansley, my poet friend, entering the kitchen in black beret, 1989. A re-scrambling of half-centuries codes, punk, hippie, beat, Buddhist, myself, also all of these. the plump witch with red lipstick, more proof of the oracular dancing cannibal goddess that is my muse and constantly manifesting. A goofy kitten also entering the room, my mood shifting with the difficulties of sober mind in an alcoholic's body. I prepare for more coffee and meditation practice. Lou kept getting in trouble for smoking cigarettes. You weren't supposed to smoke at Wilbur, anywhere. He was swiftly tagged the overgrown bad boy. My tromping around in black motorcycle jacket also seemed to unnerve the rich Marin crowd. Since that was an agreement, it's very costly. Since 1975, Lou and I had read poetry together, sold coke together, sold candles out of a van, and finally drank and drugged ourselves into enemies. In my own final months of drinking, 1985, I had attended his wedding, a weird affair presided over by both a priest and a member of a Crowley magical lodge, which Lou and his wife did not belong to. Held at the San Francisco Art Institute, where neither Lou nor his wife were enrolled. His wife didn't like me. I was a bad influence. Now I learned 3 years later Lou's wife had left him because of his drinking and drugging, and he had also joined 12-step. Now Lou found it difficult to be alone, and here in early sobriety, he was bouncing off the wall. There was Raquel gliding across the public pool, sleek as a seal, newly pregnant with another man's baby. There was the sister of the bass player of his last band. Brief, a couple of fucks. He grew tired or she withdrew or both. There was Kim, divorcee, a coke dealer boyfriend she was deciding to get rid of and interviewing prospective candidates for new paramour before cutting the guy loose. She strung Lou along for months, never dumped the coke dealer. Lou came in 5 minutes. He spent an exhaustive amount of time trying to fuck her. Finally seduced her, came in 5 minutes, and began laughing at the absurdity and tension of it all. She never gave him another chance. Finally, there was Linda, who considered herself a stone alcoholic. He met her when she was drunk at a picnic, and she later passed out that very evening. Linda thought it would be nice to take ecstasy with him. In this case especially, it should be obvious Lou was walking a thin line as far as keeping himself clean and sober. Lou did not always show the most conservative approach in these areas. For instance, I strongly suggested that he stop tasting the wine and spitting it out to check its vintage at its waiter's job. He would call me up on my answering machine and leave bizarre messages of great length. I liked these messages. It was as if Lou were some journalist in Saigon leaving his last thoughts before the whole fucking hotel gets shelled. So, it shows you what an alcoholic I was, but clearing throat. But that sense of fear cannot be in my decisions, you know? I mean, I have to acknowledge it. Say I'm afraid to be alone, and afraid to get older without family. Lou didn't own an answering machine, so I had to write my expiations, like these. Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together for Peter Marti.
Peter Marti! Woohoo! As we like to say in France, Yahoo!
Wow. I think you showed that to me some time ago, but oh my God.
You never thought he would, not too much information, actually.
We're both happily married now, thank you.
There you
I want to say about this poem, it was published in the golden anniversary of Beatitude magazine, which was one of the initial publications in the North Beach Poetry Renaissance.
Put out by someone who had never been published in it.
Well, we're thanking Neely Cherkowski and Latif Harris, the editors. Anyway, It starts with the first line. Heard the old poet Corso died. Did you know him? A friend wrote a card to my mountain retreat, and I've been trying, yes, I knew him, trying for 2 weeks now to recollect everything I know of him. So I'll tell her, since she's a kind woman and generous, and Gregory himself said, I've lived my whole life upon the kindness of Jews and women. And he did live, and he wrote, and because of the muse's kindness, he had his own keen, kind light of mind. The first death news delivered before evening class with Lama Tarchin Rinpoche by Brady wrote Nima Mark Olmsted, Buddhist poet buddy these many years. Did you hear? Gregory Corso died yesterday. Oh, money put me home, leapt from my mouth. Diane DePrima, now one of the last beat survivors, seated behind me in the crowded room, wondered of his literary estate's destination. That's something very valuable, she said solemnly, as I would consider over the next week, sitting with my mind, gazing at the sky, meditation on empty self, and thoughts of Gregory. Part 1. As long as I'm alive, superstars will die. Corso poet said of Elvis Presley, summer of 1977, summer of Sam in New York City, and in Boulder, Colorado at Naropa Buddhist Writers College. It was a poetry reading that he commandeered the stage for, and he pronounced the king of rock and roll dead, then introduced a Hell's Angel type who wanted to read a poem. I'm so embarrassed, he said after the lousy poem was read, teetering between the danger of a biker stomp and the crowd's adoring hostility. Gregory had what it took. Poetic chops to bust down the crypts of Shelley and Keats, a silver-winged tennis shoe smelling of old socks, a broken caduceus he would pawn to create visionary everyday myth, or to get high on heroin. Gregory Corso is dead, and there are no more superstars of words that flow like water in the desert of academic poetry. The true poet, lost like Rimbaud, crying for his muse. Don't write on heroin, he once told me. The muse, she don't like that. His cigarettes endlessly smoked, thin, watery junk blood spritzed on the walls of countless toilets across America, but mostly in San Francisco and New York City, where he could score easily. And then when the money dried up, he'd just retype poems from an old manuscript, spill some coffee and ashes on it, hold it over the stove, and et voila. A literary find that Gregory would then send our friend Vinny Zangrillo to take to the rare book dealers, and they would salute the Dark Prince of H once again. Last summer, Vinny visited him and he said his death was going to be good. He was being nursed by his long-lost daughter with organic mushroom barley soup, and she spooned him dilaudid flavored ice cream to ease his cancer pain, massaging his feet, cooing him to sleep. Then last fall, he said he didn't think Gregory would last much longer. And Corso told his longtime friend George Scrivani, I did abuse my body, so. But that summer of '77, my first intro to the bad boy poetry. I was a young poet apprentice to Allen Ginsberg at Naropa Institute's Jack Kerouac School of Disembodied Poetics. I got to know Gregory, though mostly just in class, where he chastised us for not having read enough. You mean no one's read Céline's trilogy? Ah, you gotta dig this guy, baby. Or he would snap. Beware of people who laugh too much. They're hiding something. He also taught us about Francois Villon, and so identified with him, I thought maybe Gregory was a possible reincarnation. And then I confided to my new friend, poet buddy Mark Fisher, now also a gone shade. that we should call Corso Francois Fucatir, due to his gargoyle rep in the quiet Buddhist community that suffered through wild summers when the riders descended and Gregory threw firecrackers into the Buddhist shrine room full of meditators, or once tossed a huge black dildo into the women riders' workshop. I actually found, by chance, an old Naropa newsletter gossip about these antics the week before he died. Memories fled back. Yelling drunk parties, borrowing money from Ginsburg to buy booze at the all-night liquor store, wicked scalding hangovers I'd bleach out with mid-morning sun and strong coffee by the apartment pool with Vinny. Gregory, a reluctant student of Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche, sometimes would sit quietly through Chogi Baby's teachings, but when asked, would decline to take refuge as a Buddhist, instead declaring, "Buddhism, it's a religion. I don't dig religion per se. It's the best religion, but it's still a religion." And then once, spotting a Tibetan monk jogging by in full burgundy and gold robes, yelled, "Stop that man, he just stole an ego." But like so many mafioso or Kerouac, he went out a Catholic. Like a regular Italian American, George said, insisting on an open casket so we could kiss him goodbye, which tradition goes back to ancient Rome, the final kiss to take in the essence of the departed. And there was an all-day wake and mass in Our Lady of Pompeii in Manhattan's West Village, where he was baptized 71 years ago. But no priestly confession before he died. His muse was enough. Toodaloo. And it isn't until just this afternoon when I finally say poa for him, place his picture in front of the Buddhist text for transference of consciousness at death, chant the words in Tibetan, and visualize Gregory smiling, as his mortal words and positive actions take him to Pure Land rebirth. Not till just now, these memories begin to form, ghosts of the 3 times, buzzing like that insistent fly into the woodsy view window near rugged, ragged cobwebs dangling in the now chill winter afternoon. We spoke of what will remain of Gregory, the deathless poesy, the heraldic nunzio, now gone after surviving addiction for so many years. The last limping leg of the Beat Generation, George said, and then we grew silent too. For I was a drunk and shared the love of heroin and a rush of poem with Corso, and sober now 13 years, I wondered about the two woven together, the drugs and poetry, and how they entwined my generation, following in those decadent footsteps, hoping to hit a vein and live to tell it all, tell it fast, because the road is fast, and because everyone else just talked about sports. I'm rich. I'd use my blood as an extravagance. It's from Gregory's poem, Sunset. Then he returned to the Big Apple to live in East Village Railroad walk-up after Naropa. He and Mark Fisher became drug buddies with Gregory. Back in San Francisco, I published Birthstone Poetry Magazine with 27 Naropa writers. I didn't see Gregory again until summer of 1980 at the International Poetry Festival in Italy. I was in the lobby bar of the American Hotel waiting to go to dinner with George and Gregory, and I just brought Jackie Curtis a drink. I was wearing skin-tight black Levi's, a lizard print shirt, yellow canvas shoes. Gregory, inclining his head towards me, said to W.S. Burroughs, "What do you think about this piece of rough trade?" Nudging me towards the thin gray Duke, who chuckled his sardonic W.C. Fields. The next day, Corso introduced me to some young Italian poets who scored morphine ampules, which I in turn sold to Burroughs. And it was Corso who set it all up so he could geese for free. Back in San Francisco, Vinny's phone call came. Gregory wants to see you. He's broke. He needs a place to hang out. He needs some cheap drugs. I told him you'd help. And so the visit. I picked Corso up at Embarcadero YMCA, where 5 years earlier, I had had sad farewell sex with my college true love, the one who made me a poet. And I then watched through the grimy window, desolate Greyhound bust exhaust pull onto the freeway, taking her away. His room was rank with him. Overflowing trash, ciggy butts, and dirty clothes. He just left it behind. The poet man arrived chez moi with nothing but his brain and poetry. We sit hours at the big kitchen table, smoking my homegrown pot, cooking up the lauded. Gregory, unlike Vinny, wouldn't help me shoot it up, though. I don't give nobody their first drugs. I don't shoot people up. He's in my tiny bathroom, hunting for uncollapsed veins in his feet, then spritzing the pink junk blood water from the clean needle onto my punk rock flyer plastered bathroom. I'm in the kitchen, jabbing a large gauge needle into my ass cheek, trying to skin pop it, and hallucinating, see inside the muscle, the gluteus, sinewy black somehow, like a hole opened up into the void. I shudder now, just remembering it, shift my butt in the uncomfortable chair. Gregory would quote himself to me. I met a man who died. And that was about Kerouac. And he would talk about Kerouac, riff on what he meant, how he edited. Waves of language, of sublime mind slithering forth on clouds of grass and cigarette smoke. I was rapt, was stoned. I could hardly follow sometimes. He could take so many drugs and be energized. I grew mute, stultified while he sang. I said something once about my ambition, and he said, "Watch out for ambition, and don't think Ginsberg's shit doesn't stink." Ah, you're a beautiful man, Peter Marty, he said once, cupping my face gently, gazing into my eyes. The connection of deep poetry, truth, and well, about something anyway that felt important. And then I was just hanging out with my literary heroes. He showed me the manuscript he was publishing as Herald of the Autochthonic Spirit, sometimes changing a few words, but never much. Part 2. The only thing left in the room was death, hiding beneath the kitchen sink. I'm not real, it cried. I'm just a rumor spread by life. So, kind lady, to you who wrote me asking about the old poet, I pick up the thread. It's now Sunday in the gone world of airplane, drone, and bird chirps, and even one just smacking into the clear plate glass window, startling me, leaving a feathery tuft on the glass, but then flying off unharmed. More of Gregorio Nunzio Corso, il miglior Fabrio, the better maker, the heraldic poet who never tired of his muse, nor he. Gregory would often say, "What about the poet? You gotta pay the poet." Desperate for money once, challenged by Richard Rogers to write a poem on the spot, this one was bought by my LA poet friend Richard Modiano for $20. You'll never die, because when you're dead, you won't know it. He wasn't in a hurry, and he wasn't greedy, and he may have stolen, but as George said, he wasn't attached to what he stole. Then again, he never stole from George. Fall, 1980. My basement apartment was nice and cozy for Gregory. It was ready for a long visit. I doled out the drugs and cooked. Gregory held forth. Then, afternoons, we'd stroll to the cafe floor to drink beer or coffee, where our cute counter girl, a friend of mine named Belinda, worked. Getting laid, Peter, it's all about pheromones, he whispered, eyeing Belinda. And with that, he reached into his pants, and as he narrated, you rub under the foreskin, because that's where the pheromones are. And then he proceeded to go pick up our coffees, first passing his fingers beneath Belinda's nose, then patting her face to make sure she got the full-on Gregory experience. He asked her out, but she declined it. Maybe next time. So this is some kind of elegy, not fawning, since Gregory could turn mean on you. He turned on Ginsburg more than once, turned on his benefactors, turned on drug buddies, and turned on me too. I sit steaming sweat in the California winter glare. First week of February, pictures of kind Buddhist teachers on these walls, picture of my sweet dead cat, pet of 18 years, as he reposed on fiancée, now wife Nancy's lap, and an old picture of Gregory. Having done my Buddhist prostrations for the day, imagining Corso, recently dead friend Ross, my Aunt Dorothy, who once partied with Kerouac, my parents, and all the dead beings killed by me, animals eaten, enemies fought with, my ex-wife, other relatives, co-workers. I sit sweating at the keyboard, thinking of that time, that kairos, what the Greeks called the nexus of perfect time, place, and circumstance that was that fall when Corso came to visit. It was election time. Reagan was heading for victory. When the phone rang, "Hi, Mom. No, we're just sitting around." "Oh, is that your mother? I gotta talk to her." "Mrs. Morty, you got a beautiful son here." "Who are you voting for?" "Anderson." "No, you should vote for Reagan. See, that way things will get really bad again in the country, like when Eisenhower was president. That's when really creative things happen to the spirit." Part 3. And so the magic ends. The players evaporate as phantoms. Beauty fades. His words scribbled on a sheet of typing paper left next to the folded out Birthstone magazine with his now annotated poem. "I only took that which you could afford to give." And some other words of his, now forgot, stuck in a box somewhere in a storage with my blood-spattered posters, with his pictures from Rome, my own poems written, inspired by his voice, my own hesitant efforts, barely filling even one slim volume because I, too, had the dark habit to contend with. Gregory took about $30 in the pills I'd hidden in the house. Oh, I had dozens more secretly stashed away for his hopefully extended visit, but it was now cut short by his urge to move on. I was indignant, calling everyone. "Did you hear what Corso did? And after all my blah, 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 blah." Corso said, "Those that most demand respect seldom deserve it. Best not to disrespect." Months later, at a big downtown San Francisco poetry scene, I made the mistake of confronting him. "Be careful, Peter Morty. Be careful of what you're accusing." And glaring broken tooth like a real menace personified, then softening, told me how they had tried to kick him out of the theater for jerking off. He said, "I never took it out of my pants, but that girl was so hot, oh my God, I had to come." I told him of how I wanted my own rock and roll band. "They say what a great poet Jim Morrison is. Jim Morrison was no poet. You know why? He repeated himself, the refrain, the whole troubadour shot. Nothing wrong with song, but it ain't poetry." But of course I didn't listen. I even wrote a long song for him called "Arms of Morpheus" as an elliptic goodbye, met my dreamed after blonde musician future wife, and chased the troubadour dream, parking my own muse behind the booze bottles of fame, ambition, sex, and more. Until years later, it all came crashing down, and bereft of all, I wept at the typewriter one night and heard her faint voice stir once again. And the years pass, and the poets who lived become Dharma practitioners who wrote, and others died, but the poet lived on. Now scoring H, now methadone, now boozing, now living with woman poet, now supported by a famous Japanese artist, now by a bookstore owner and his wife. Who knows if he ever got sober or straight? What would have happened to his muse? Ginsberg said, I never understood how smart guys like you and Mark and Gregory could get hooked. But dig. Corso, for him, it was the shot, but not the whole mess. And I never saw him again after that fall of my youth. At his memorial, Patti Smith sang Nature Boy. David Aram played music. Some guy was chased out of the service by an Italian woman in dreadlocks after alimony or something. She was possessed by the spiritus of Gregory, Mark Fisher said. And they lined up to kiss him goodbye, to take a taste of that essence. Just as I kissed the cold flesh of my father goodbye a few years ago, understanding nothing. And his ashes will be interred in Rome next to angelic Shelley and Keats. So I sit in the broiling sun, naked on this ragged lotus of a chair, revealing the only treasure I got, some dusty memories and faith. Not that anyone would care. George, who loved him best, spoke at the San Francisco Memorial. I said that if they ever got a chance, everyone should love a poet. So, kind lady, Gregory Corso the poet is dead. And I did sort of know him, and in remembering found something of myself buried away, the part not tortured by dreams of money and fame or my next meal even, the part that never worries but stares at the view beyond window, beyond eyeball, beyond time, deathless mind, awake, awake, awake!